I'm Ryan,
I'm Juan.
and this is the S.O.U.N.D Project. So today we're interviewing Juan, who is you've been here a year now, but
Yeah.
you're one of our associate acoustical consultants is your official title, I believe.
Yep.
So just like we've been doing this short series of interviewing, the whole staff, just so that our viewers can learn a little bit more about us as a team.
Sure.
And now it's your turn. So,
Yeah.
So I guess I just want to start off with the basic, where are you from? Where'd you grow up? And then where'd you go to school and things like that?
Sure. So I actually grew up in Lafayette, Indiana, which is like an hour northwest of Carmel or Indy, depending on where you live. But my family's from Jalisco, Mexico. So both of my parents were, born and raised in Jalisco. And then when they moved here in the early 2000s, I was born. So ever since then, we lived in Lafayette, and I kind of grew up going to school there, and then naturally transitioned to Purdue. It was 10 minutes away from our house.
Yeah.
And kind of worked a couple jobs, got a degree, and found myself here.
Yeah. So what'd you get your degree in? Let's talk about that.
Sure. So I majored in mechanical engineering, but I had a focus in noise and acoustics.
Okay.
And all of that kind of came from my love of music. Originally, when I graduated high school, I thought I was going to be working in a manufacturing facility, probably working on cars or planes or whatever.
Yeah.
But my first job out of college ended up being working at a factory that made trumpets and trombones up in northern Indiana.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was still manufacturing, but it was just kind of a left turn from what I had originally planned out.
Yeah. Well, so what initially made you want to go into mechanical engineering, or were you always going for mechanical, or was it kind of you knew you wanted to go for engineering and then decided later on that you wanted to do mechanical?
Yeah, so I was pretty set on mechanical since I was probably a sophomore or junior in high school.
Nice.
And it was because one of my cousins graduated from the same high school as me.
Okay.
And he went into mechanical engineering, and he got a job at GM.
Okay.
So I always thought he was working on the coolest projects, the newest cars and everything. So, I just had my mindset on mechanical ever since then, just because I knew it was a really good path.
Sure.
Because even if you don't end up in a manufacturing role, you can still go pretty much anywhere with that kind of a degree.
Did you always want to stay, with your family being in West Lafayette, did you always want to stay in Indiana, or was it kind of just wherever the work would take you is where you wanted to go?
Kind of both. It's been really nice to be close to my family.
Yeah.
And while I was open to going somewhere else, I had never thought to do so because I was always in so many bands in Lafayette. So even when I was, living up in northern Indiana, I would drive down 2 hours every week or so to play a gig or, do a rehearsal or whatever. So it just kind of worked out better for me to stay close by. You know?
Sure.
And now that I'm only an hour away, it's even better.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then backing up a little bit, going into where you talked about the manufacturing of horns and everything. So you are a horn player and I've never heard you play drums. I know you play drums, but I've heard you play trumpet, and you're a really great trumpet player. So
thanks, man.
How long have you played trumpet? What got you into music? Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so to answer that first question, I've been playing trumpet since the end of 5th grade into 6th grade.
Nice. Okay.
So at our middle school, we had kind of an introductory class to music. And I remember a really good sax player, local guy here in Indiana, Ned Boyd.
Okay.
He was my, the guy who introduced me to brass and just horns and stuff.
Nice.
And for some reason, his middle school beginning classes just really hit with me.
Okay.
And, I was always doing really well in class for band, and I just kind of kept going. I moved schools in middle school, and then we went to a middle school that had a jazz band, so I joined jazz band, and then just kind of kept going in high school. In high school, I played in every single band available.
Nice.
I missed the first year of marching band just because I was a little timid.
Sure.
But once I started playing in pep band, jazz band, pit band, I was okay, I got to do marching band. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's awesome.
But
did you play trumpet in all of those, or did you play drums in some of them?
Yeah, I played trumpet and everything. I tried to play drums in pep band and stuff, but they were like, nah. You need to go play horn.
That's awesome.
So I tried. But the drums was kind of a thing that I had been like loving on since I was probably like 5 years old.
Okay.
I remember my dad taking us to Toys R Us.
Okay.
And he bought us one of those like beginning little drum sets.
Yeah.
Like the ones that are like literally made out of plastic.
Yep.
And I remember just breaking that thing, right? Just smashing so hard into the heads that they would rip and stuff. So probably within a year, we got rid of that thing.
Okay.
But that love for drums kind of like persisted.
Yeah.
Like up until middle school.
Okay.
And it was mainly because my cousins up in Elgin near Chicago, they've been in a Mexican cover band my whole life.
Okay.
And those guys had been playing bass and guitar, accordion probably since they were 5 years old.
Whoa. Okay. That's awesome.
And those guys grew up playing in the church.
Sure.
So, although we didn't go to the same church, like whenever we'd go visit and stuff, we would hear them play.
Yeah.
And then when they would come down for shows in Indiana, we would always go to their shows.
Okay.
So like I literally grew up in the mixed position of the band.
Yeah.
Like just listening to my family play music.
That's amazing.
So one of my cousins he's a multi-instrumentalist.
Okay.
Like on stage, he's playing 2 keyboards, trombone, saxophone, accordion. He's singing second.
Dang.
Like he's just a
True
music
multi-instruments.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And my other drummer for the band, or my other cousin was the band's drummer.
Okay.
So like I would just stare at him, right? Like whenever they would come by, I'd be like, man, that is so cool. Like, and just as I got older, I was like, I want to do what they do, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so an opportunity in middle school came through where one of my best friends was selling his drum set.
Okay.
So I remember like going down to his basement, giving him like $250 and just like bringing home a drum set one day.
That's
my
awesome.
parents were not happy.
That's awesome though. I mean, the way that you were able to get started that way.
Yeah. So I was just a bedroom drummer for until college pretty much.
Okay. Nice. Well, and I know you play like in a band with some family members. So is that the same band or is that a different set of family members?
Yeah, it's a different set of family members. So one of my cousins who lives in Lafayette plays accordion.
Okay.
And he actually just joined a new project in Chicago.
Nice.
So I think he's playing with a band called Inversivo.
Okay.
And they're doing really well. They have a great like horn section, and
that's awesome.
So I'm really happy for him. And my other cousin, when he was a young boy, he was living in Lafayette, and then his family went back to Mexico until he was like 18.
Okay. Wow.
So he kind of grew up playing the Mexican authentic style in Mexico.
Okay.
And he picked up guitar, bass, vocals, a little bit of accordion. So when he came back over here when he was about 18, I was maybe 20 or 21 in college.
Yeah.
We were like, yo, we need to get a band together, you know?
Yeah.
So basically we formed that project, and then we played like two and a half years.
Okay.
Up until like the end of last year.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, man.
I know, like, I feel like you're always talking about like a different gig that you're like working on, like whether it be, like in the band with your family, or if you're doing like show choir or like sitting in with another band. Like I feel like you're always doing something. Like what are some of the other like music things that you're participating in? Yeah.
So right now I got a really cool opportunity to play show choir in Brownsburg. Mm-hmm. So I'm just playing for their choirs and whatnot. And we're about at the end of the season, but it's been about a 3-month gig where I go play a full day of competitions on Saturday, you know, plus a couple of rehearsals. And the grand finale of this whole gig is actually going to be next week, where I'm going to be playing trumpet down in Nashville at the Grand Ole Opry.
Nice. That would be amazing. Have you been in there before?
I have not. Okay, and cool. I've kind of heard that it moved venues.
Yes.
So I'm not exactly sure what to be anticipating, but I'm stoked regardless.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing. And like for your first experience to be playing in there, that's going to be amazing.
Yeah, man. And I'm just really happy that like we have the whole set like really polished, and the choir feels really confident about their performance.
Good.
So I'm just hoping to go there and like have a blast. You know what I mean?
That's awesome. Well, so then moving on from music, you're also involved in like poker and like billiards, pool, not sure what the official term is, but like, yeah. So like talk about some of the other things that like you're involved in outside of music.
Yeah. So I'm a really big fan of like stats and physics. So that's kind of where I got into, like the physics side is more towards like the billiards.
For sure.
And then the stats side is more towards like poker.
Okay.
So just growing up, like I had always been playing poker, like in home games with my friends, or in college, I would, travel to casinos and just play a little bit here and there.
Okay.
On my 21st birthday, I won a poker tournament in Chicago.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So like, it's just like one of those themes of my life that kind of keeps coming back.
Okay.
And I really like to do it. And
Yeah.
it's like, if you're successful at something and it like vibes with you, it's just like no reason to stop. You know what I mean? And with pool, like I remember playing pool at the Boys and Girls Club after elementary school, like every day.
Nice.
It'd be pool, kickball, and basketball.
Okay.
Like those are the three things that I would love to do pretty much every single day.
That's awesome.
And I kind of, once I was done with elementary school, like I didn't think about pool until college.
Dang. Okay.
So in college, like I just remember seeing the flyer for the billiards club, and I was like, this kind of seems like something that I'd be interested in. And like I hadn't played pool in probably a decade.
Okay.
Probably, I might have played a little bit like at somebody's house or somewhere, but in college, I just like picked it up and ran with it. I bought my own cue, bought my own break cue, got my own like racks and everything. And eventually I got to the point where, I was playing the top players at the university.
Yeah.
So I kind of joined the team, and we would travel around the Midwest and play in Akron, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, like IU.
Yeah.
Or UIUC in Illinois.
Okay.
Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Like, so we were traveling like once a quarter to play.
That's cool.
And just that lifestyle or just being able to compete, like it brought something to the table that I hadn't been able to do since I had played sports,
Sure.
So it really captivated me, and like the game is kind of like a game of chess almost. In certain situations in 8-ball, you're playing really strategically. You're having to play safe. Like it's really a mental game.
Okay.
So ever since then, like I became the Purdue Billiards Club president.
Okay.
And I just kind of ran with it. I grew the club a little bit.
Sure.
And then I left it like just really fully grown with a bunch of people interested. Awesome. And, I moved around to Elkhart, continued playing in leagues there. And then when I came down here, I had to start my own team.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So now I have my buddies playing in that team with my girlfriend's on the team. And we've been doing really well.
That's great.
Like right now, I think we're first place in our division for 9-ball. So we've just been on the up and up, and it's been awesome.
That's really cool. So I know, like I feel like I hear you talk about like playing pool competitively a little bit more than like poker, but like do you play poker competitively also? Yeah,
so I like to play poker tournaments, not so much cash games, because it just takes really deep pockets to play cash games. But the tournaments to me are all strategy.
Okay.
So like, because the blinds are increasing, you're racing against time. There's so many like statistics involved. There's independent chip models. Mm-hmm. There's just so many things that you can use to like make a good decision.
Yeah.
Right. So it just feels like I'm playing this like journey right to the end.
Sure.
And it's like King of the Hill. Last man standing takes it home. You know? And while they're really fun to play, it's very time consuming.
Sure.
Because like if you start a tournament on a Saturday at noon, you're probably not going to be done until 10 p.m. or midnight.
Sure.
So it's just something that I like to do, but it takes a lot of time.
That's fair. Is that something that like, well, same deal with pool. Like when I hear people playing, pool and poker, like I'm thinking like Vegas. I'm not thinking, Indiana. Like, so, I mean, do you have to do a lot of traveling to get to places, or is there a lot of opportunity within Indiana to do those things?
Yeah. So locally there's tons of leagues. So, You can play local leagues where you're playing out of the same place every week.
Nice.
But then there are, like quarterly tournaments that the leagues host.
Sure.
And usually you don't have to travel more than like an hour to play those.
Okay.
It's when you start playing the pro events that you really have to travel a lot.
Sure.
But being in the Midwest, like I would say Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Illinois is like really a massive hub of billiards around here.
Okay.
Like we have the Derby City Classic down in Louisville.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually on the Indiana side.
Okay.
But like every year you can go down there and watch the best in the world play.
That's awesome.
And
okay.
Same thing with Ohio. Like some of the best players like Billy Thorpe come out of Ohio.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's just so much good pool here in the Midwest that it doesn't, unless you're playing the top buy-in events, it doesn't make sense to travel too far.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So I guess, are there other things that, like, we've talked a lot about some of the things that you do like outside of work. Like, are there other things that you do to like take your time outside of work? Or is that pretty much like between all the music gigs and pool and poker, like, is that pretty much, your life outside of work?
Yeah, I mean, I like to bike a lot. I just got mine fixed. I like lifting and just going to the gym, hitting the sauna and whatnot.
Nice.
But apart from that, I'm really big into 3D modeling.
Okay.
So especially at my old job, I got into 3D printing quite heavily.
That's awesome.
So I kind of like to design certain parts. Like it's mostly stuff that I need, right?
Sure.
So like whenever you have something that breaks, you can just turn on the 3D printer, go into SolidWorks, bust out a quick model, export it, and then within a few hours you have whatever part you need.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One of my friends, one of my other friends, like also does, like, he's pretty heavily into the 3D printing thing. And it's like, his father-in-law had like a part on his truck break or something, and he was able to like 3D print it. And it's like just the use cases like that. It's like, wow, this is way more than a hobby. Like this is actually like very practical to have in your house. Like
all you need is a pair of calipers and a good CAD software, and you're good to go.
Dang. So that's kind of like a perfect segue then, moving into what you do here at Haverstick Design.
Sure.
So you obviously work in CAD a lot here.
Yeah.
And I know like since you've started, like you've been able to alleviate both Oscar and Gavin's plates like quite a bit. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you do here and what your role includes?
Sure. So, I mean, just like them, I'm a consultant. So we've kind of studied, noise control, acoustics, vibrations, all that good stuff. But I feel like my strong suit is kind of 3D modeling.
Sure.
So a lot of what we do when we go do on-site testing, which I've been helping out with a lot here recently, is like go get data, take measurements, and then put everything in our models so that we can get like accurate predictions of how we need to treat the room or what kind of wall types they need to design. So and a lot of that comes down to modeling the stuff in 3D, right? So I like to use a space mouse, which is like a 3D mouse that kind of lets you orbit around the screen pretty quickly. And I like putting together models. So this job has just given me the opportunity to kind of iterate on that process and just really get dialed in with like the whole 3D modeling aspect of my career.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and you're in a little bit different of a situation than like, well, I guess Gavin came from mechanical engineering. Oscar came from like an actual like acoustical background.
Right.
So like what was the shift like coming with a mechanical engineering background with a love of music and then coming into something that is like fully acoustical engineering? Like how'd you like overcome that?
Yeah. So, from working at a factory, like it was basically manufacturing, right?
Yeah.
So you're dealing with like a whole different type of environment, different variables. There's parts, there's material, there's employees, there's cycle times, also like there's shipping, there's all sorts of things going on in a factory.
Sure.
But when you're working in a consulting role, and especially here, it's more of like architectural planning.
Right. Yeah.
So there's really no product. At the end of the day, I mean, we have like, CAD packages or whatnot, but we don't have a physical thing that we're delivering to a customer.
Right.
So that was kind of a big transition for me.
Sure.
Because I was always like so focused on like, how fast can we get this out of the door?
Yeah.
Or how can we make this cheaper? Or how do I design something to improve the process?
Yeah.
And here, like while you can still improve processes and all that, there's nothing physical at the end.
Right.
Right. But the other hurdle that I had to overcome here was learning kind of architecture and architectural design.
Yeah.
Because from an ME background, we kind of learned how to design parts or systems or parts of systems. Like you can think of a trombone as a collection of systems, right? Sure. Or a trumpet as well.
Yeah.
And here, while that systems level thinking still kind of comes out in certain places, it's really more about designing buildings and structures.
Right.
And with my background, I didn't really know, I knew what walls were and like what materials were in the walls.
Right.
But you never really understand like the thicknesses of certain materials or like how the wall is put together.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure, you can see people down the highway building houses and you kind of think, oh yeah, you just throw up some 2x4s, slap some drywall on it, and you're good to go.
It's a lot more than that when you're talking a studio space.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when you're talking a studio space, you have to think about so many things, like especially low end. If you have a lot of subs in the room, and then isolation is a big component of it. So you're always trying to figure out how to get the most isolation for the least amount of cost.
Yeah.
Especially if the budget is concerning or you need to be accounting for that.
For sure.
So just that transition overall it's got me thinking in like a different gear or like on a different plane, because it's not quite making parts.
Sure.
Yeah. You're making whole structures.
Right. I do want to make the comment too, like it's been really cool. So the fact that obviously I don't work in CAD, kind of looking from the outside in, like it's been really cool to see like where you started when you first came here to like what you're doing now. It's like, whoa, you have really grown like in the past year, which is awesome.
I actually opened up like my first SketchUp models like a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Because it was my 1 year anniversary on Wednesday, and I was like,
yeah.
How far have I came,
Yeah.
And I opened those guys up, and it was like a basic house with a window in it or a door.
Yeah.
And now, we're out here making full-blown churches in SketchUp.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy like what we can do with those tools,
Absolutely. No, it's like I said, it's just really cool to see it from the outside, like how much people are growing. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So one of the things that my wife kind of started when we first started the series is like, because Gavin was the first person that we interviewed, and she's like, by the end of the interview, I want to know like these 4 or 5 things. So one of them, so we're just going to do like a rapid fire question.
All right.
One of them was Coke or Pepsi?
Coke guy. Coming from Mexico, you got to get that real sugar cane. Yeah.
And man, that's so my wife and I got Chipotle like not too long ago, and they're like, they have like the real Mexican like bottled Coke. I'm like, this is great.
Yeah, man.
Cool. So you're on the right side of the fence on that.
Yeah,
one.
it'll give you diabetes, but it's worth it.
Yeah, definitely. The next one was, who is your go-to Mario Kart character?
Ooh. Man, I like Luigi.
All right.
Yeah.
Man, I think that's the first. I think you're the first one that said Luigi.
Now, if we're talking Super Smash, Kirby all day.
You're one of the. So my brother's a Kirby guy, and I'm like,
yeah, you got to be able to suck in those characters and pop them right off the screen.
Yeah, that's awesome. The next one is let's see. It was so if you're going on like a road trip, are you a podcast or a music guy?
Originally, I was music all the way.
Okay.
Right? And I have a really nice like car system set up.
Yeah, you do.
So I really like to start off with like, rap or hip hop, just kind of like get into the flow. But depending on the length of the road trip, like if it's any more than 3 hours, I'm going to switch to a podcast eventually.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's your go-to podcast?
I'm really big fans of the JRE, the Patrick Bet David podcast, so PBD. Okay. I really like Theo Vaughn's podcast.
Nice.
And there's a few others out there. I can't think of them right now, but I'm sure they'll come back up.
Nice. And then the last one was, what is your guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure, man, probably eating ice cream.
All right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Can't go wrong with that.
That's easy enough, right?
Yeah.
Well, Juan, thank you so much for, joining. Like I said, like it's been really cool seeing you grow in the last year. And
Thanks,
I'm
man.
excited to see what you do in the next year.
Yeah.
And so that's been another episode of the S.O.U.N.D Project. So Juan mentioned that he does 3D printing. So if you need anything 3D printed, go ahead and comment below what you would 3D print. And Juan will go ahead and reply to you if he can make it for you or not.
For sure.
And then other than that, thank you again for being a part of the S.O.U.N D Project. And we'll see you next week.